Okay, let's see if I can do a short. Right, long and short of it is, I did my show today, 3 hours. Yeah, 3 hours. Just make sure I write three fingers. And one of the things that I noticed during the show, around about an hour and a half in, where I was using this on Wi-Fi, it's something strange going on with Rekordbox at the moment. It really is, because whenever I do exports, you know, it comes up with errors, and it keeps doing this as well. So I don't know whether or not I've got to rebuild the database. I don't know. I've no idea. It might be I keep seeing this optimizing your library or something like that as well. So, you know, maybe I'll have to look into that. Anyway, bottom line is that's not the story for today. The Omnis-Duo and how it performed. Sound quality, absolutely amazing. I used in here as well the sources. You can see I've got a SD card. I reformatted it and I put some Rekordbox tracks on it, and I did that. USB, I've got a terabyte SSD around the back somewhere. That's the network connection. Oh, there it is. Where is it? It's there. There you go. So that's a ruggedized one. So I did that, and also there is it says software control. Now, interesting enough, what I did two things. It's in software control at the moment, but what I did do is I put it in. So I was using Wi-Fi. I was using Wi-Fi to talk to the same Rekordbox library. So effectively, what that does is, and I'll show you. So at the moment I've got these tracks that are off of. This is coming off of the SD card at the moment, or is it the? No, actually, this is coming off the USB at the moment. Okay, so this is coming off the USB. Now, what I did, one thing, I did have a crash. And effectively, the crash that I had was when that was in export mode. So, to give you, for instance, when this is normally in export mode, what I did, I pulled the lead out. So, basically, I've got the USB lead in here. So, I had this out. In fact, I'm going to disconnect it now. Right. So now what should happen is when we go to source, we've only got USB and SD, right? So what I wanted to do was I wanted to not do that in performance mode, which consequently performance mode worked seamlessly. So I put it into export mode, and in export mode what it will do is it will then pop up down here. It will then pop up in a minute. Unless I haven't turned Wi-Fi on this, so that's a very good point. Let me turn Wi-Fi on. I turn Wi-Fi off. Okay, so Wi-Fi is on. Now this, bearing in mind, okay, just to prove this is right, I actually changed this to where are you? Going to utility and info, and there you go. So I'm actually 1.01, which is the latest firmware. Right. Okay, so, right, all of a sudden, it's in Wi-Fi. The Mac, which is also on Wi-Fi, is now seeing, it's seeing the link. The link is coming up. So I can now go link, and you get those two coming up. So now what would happen is, when I do this, and I go source, there you go, you can see Mark's MacBook Pro. And essentially, I've got all of my tracks. They are there. If I go down to playlist, for instance, I can now go down and pick, for instance, let's just pick this one. I did have these two tracks actually on here as well. So let me just load one of these tracks in. So one thing I noticed first of all is how long it actually takes to load. Now what you got to bear in mind, I've got this set to 5 gig, but of course, in the studio, I have got a load of tracks and I've got a load of Wi-Fi. So literally all of the devices, that's Wi-Fi. You know, that's Wi-Fi. This is Wi-Fi. My broadcast server underneath is Wi-Fi. That's Wi-Fi. That's Wi-Fi. That's Wi-Fi. Oh, Agents of Shield. Right. So I've got a lot of Wi-Fi in here as well. So there's a lot of, and bearing in mind, right, that my Wi-Fi disk is there. So you would think that it would be okay, all right? So it did load. And also what it's done is it's also brought across the, and you can see it's over there too. It did bring it across. And now basically that is playing. So it did do it. But what happened in the set, I went to load one of the tracks. So I actually picked it. I went on to source, and bearing in mind what you're using is, this is essentially one of the sets I've got in there. Picked that. Let's just pick that track, and I did that to select another track. And you know, it does. To be fair, it does take quite a bit of time. But what it's doing is it's putting it across the airwaves, and this is obviously early days, early doors, and I suspect probably what will happen is eventually, you know, what it'll do is it'll be a lot quicker, depending on how, whether you've got, you know, your library is, or depends on, there you go. Okay, so that's there. I've got no cue set up on that. So what, look, there you go. See that? Not moving. And this is what I had before, right? So I could press that and it thinks it's playing. Weirdly enough, it thinks it's playing. Okay, so I suspect it's probably a bug. So in this case, although I can set a cue point, which consequently is green, and I don't want that, I want it to be the same ones as those. So I will say this, I haven't turned this off yet, because so I got to this situation where this deck was fine, it's playing okay. This deck, I then loaded the track and nothing was happening. So clearly a bug. So I thought, right, okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to plug myself back in. Okay, excuse me, plugging myself back in. I'm going to plug myself back in, right? So, and what I'm going to need to do, obviously, is I thought I'd get myself out of jail, because obviously if I disconnected the link connection now, what would have happened, obviously that one, they will all disappear. So what I decided to do was browse, source, and if you notice, you've got software control and also that too now, right? Don't forget, so it's still connected by Wi-Fi, and weirdly enough, it says there's a low signal, even though the thing is up there, so I don't know why that is. Maybe it's got some interference from something local, so I'll have to look into that, but I don't think it's an issue, too much of an issue, because it did load the track. Right, so bottom line is, I then ended up going to USB, and then effectively what I did was I picked a track just to get myself out of jail, and then basically I loaded that track on there as well. And interestingly enough, if you noticed, the other track is gone. It's because I've loaded it obviously onto that, because it wasn't loading well. I don't know why. So anyway, what I decided then to do was go in here and then turn off Wi-Fi. So it's early days. I will say this, it's early days for it, so I'm not going to knock it. But how I got myself out of jail and the device didn't crash, because on my RX3, on my RX3, on my XZ, what I had to do is I had to reboot the device. I had to reboot it. So what I decided to do is take the link bit off, put it back into performance mode, and I will say this, performance mode works fine. So at the moment you can see I've got 2 tracks loaded on here, but they're not obviously appearing on here. So at the moment, so how I got around it, I loaded the track from the USB stick, and then what I wanted to do is I wanted to obviously go back to using the stuff on the Mac. Now there's a reason, because I was actually following a flow on a particular so basically it was a themed show, so I built the theme and so on and so forth, rather than doing it ad hoc, which is not what radio shows are about. So now what I'm doing is I'm going to select deck 2. Okay, so what I've now done is I'm now using software control. So this is cool, all right, and this is what I love in a way about this, because what's happened is what has happened is obviously there is an issue with maybe the link. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was a Wi-Fi link, but I did plug myself in to see if it made any difference. And obviously that allows me to do software control. Now I know standalone kind of defeats the object, right? Because you're running the computer program from there. So anyway, another thing I noticed as well when I did this is the levels. Right, so the levels are quite a bit higher than, excuse the clashing, but the levels are really quite high in comparison to playing off of the stick, the USB and so on and so forth. So it could be to do with the overhead maybe. So maybe what I'll do is I'll reduce the overhead on the software to maybe lower it down. I mean, I suspect it probably is something like that, but you can see. So at the moment then, what I've got is on this side, I've got software control. On that side, I've got USB stick. So if I now stop that, let's just leave that playing. Let's just put it around there. And then what I'm going to do is, so that one is still playing, okay. And what I needed to do now is obviously to get myself record, back in the books. I needed to then do that, and then that, and now if I go back, everything that I've got. So I've got to stand up. I've got to stand up. So essentially, what happened is, there you go, and that's louder again. But even so, just saying that, I didn't have to reboot the device, all right? So that's a massive big plus. Yes, there was a bug, but I've just got to bear in mind, see, the output is huge, really is. But obviously, yeah, there is a bug, but I haven't had to reboot the device. And a lot of the time, if you're at a gig, one of the biggest challenges, and it happened, I think a couple of Christmases ago, I was at a big corporate gig, 500 people in the room, 300 people in the room actually, Marky P's, not 500, it was 300 in the room, and somebody asked for a particular request. I then went on and then downloaded it while Record Box was playing in that mode. Not in that mode. It was in performance mode. No, it wasn't in performance mode. Look, you're in performance mode now, Marky P. It was in export mode, right? It was in export mode. Yeah, it was in that one. And essentially, what happened while it was actually in that mode, I downloaded it and the deck locked up, and I had to reboot the deck to actually get it to talk back again. So today, in effect, I had a similar sort of thing, but I didn't have to reboot the deck. And I had a number of options. So, there's good and bad, like anything about any new software. One of the challenges that you have with these things is that, you could almost like say, okay, it's a new deck. There's bugs in it. Why did you go for it? Why didn't you wait? Because basically I like experimentation, okay? And I like to know, and this deck does have a lot of potential in it as well, especially the audio quality. The sound card on this was amazing. I was really, really, really surprised how good the sound card is for such a small device. And bearing in mind, as I said yesterday in the big 30-minute one I did, the footprint for this is 500 mil. All right, it's half a metre by about 270, I think it is, 300. And it's about... so let's have a look. Yeah, so about 25, 27. So it's not massive. It fits, as you can see, on the desk nicely. So I've got my mic capability there, and I've got space here. Whereas the RX3 would actually fit into that space, but I've got all the same features of the RX3 in a sense. I've also got software control, which I'm running here too. I've also got standalone capability. Obviously, the link capability, at the moment, I'm not 100% convinced that the Wi-Fi element works really that well, and it might just mean a couple of firmware updates to sort out the bugs and connectivity and so on, and I hope Alpha Theta stroke Pioneer sort that out. No doubt they're working with the same software engineers. But one thing I did notice as well is that volume levels and that could just be that the volume levels on there, it might be, I mean, I'm just wondering if I go into here and then do mixer, let's just see, headroom. So if I change the headroom to say -3 dB, yeah, right, ready, okay, I'm going to change it to none. Yeah, there you go, it is, that's what it is. So I think that's -3 dB by the looks of it. Yeah, that actually makes sense. Okay, so basically go into, when you go into settings, go into mixer and then just change your settings to -3 dB, because I suspect that's probably what it is. Weirdly enough, it's actually set to 0 on this internally for running the others, but it's -3 dB on the preferences on that. So yes, it worked well. It didn't crash. I had to do workarounds within the show, but now I know and I understand how that works. You know, I can either run it in that. I mean, it doesn't really matter if I'm running it there and there, although I like to run it in standalone. But at the same time, I like the control that I have in that sense. So this was just a quick update post show. Again, sound quality has come out okay. Show is Paradise Sessions 601, so it's going to be, let's have a look at the time, it's not there, so it's going to be 7:09 tonight. It gets published. That's when the show gets published, and then you'll be able to hear it. There was a few loud peaks in the show, but now I understand why, because when I actually picked it, it was because that was 0 dB, and that was playing off of those, which was -3 dB. There you go. So I kind of just answered my question where it's actually a lot lower. So there you go. So hopefully that's that gives you some insight as well. For me, again, I love playing on the deck, the feel of it. I love the fact that the mic is a nice switch here as well. I'm just hoping that obviously that doesn't wear out too much within time. Normally what I do is I normally have like a switch, but I'm actually creating a slide, and then what I'll probably do is I'll probably leave that on like I did with the RX3, because the RX3 was actually like a switch, but that's actually a push button, which I actually quite like. So there you go. Post show, it worked, it did okay. Go to the channel Tech Mentalist, like, subscribe. You know, I new channel, I've only 139. You know, I've had the channel for years, but I've just not done anything with it. And I just thought I would, weirdly enough, I put it on shorts, but you know, it won't be shorts. This would be quite a long one. So anyway, hope this helps you and gives you some insight. Many thanks, Marky P. That away. Peace.